The auditorium smells like floor polish and teenage ambition. Jin Taewon stands at the back, invisible among the parent crowd, watching scholarship announcements at Crestwood Academy. 15 years of building this place anonymously, brick by brick, scholarship by scholarship, and he still comes twice a year. Always unannounced. Always from the shadows. A boy walks across the stage to accept an award. Navy blazer, blue school tie, wavy low-cut hair. He carries himself carefully, the way kids do when they're used to being watched, judged, measured. In his arms, clutched against his chest like armor, a worn yellow stuffed dog. The principal announces, Elijah Anthony, National Merit Scholar finalist. The boy turns to face the audience. Jin's breath stops. The eyes. Golden. Luminous. Unmistakable. The same genetic anomaly that marked Jin's family for 7 generations. The same eyes that stare back at him from the mirror every morning. Those eyes. His hands grip the auditorium railing. In 40 years of living with violence, of building an empire from blood and silence, his hands have never betrayed him like this. Not during his first collection. Not when his father's men beat him for showing mercy. Not even the night he walked away from Seoul with nothing but a forged passport and 17 years of sins. But now they shake. The boy, Elijah, scans the crowd, and for one impossible moment, their eyes meet. Jin sees confusion flicker across the teenager's face. Recognition without understanding. Then the moment breaks. Elijah steps off stage, disappearing into the sea of students. Jin's phone is already in his hand, pulling up the school's database. Access he's not supposed to have but pays well to maintain. Elijah Anthony age. 15 mother. Amelia Anthony, Brooklyn Scholarship recipient since 7th grade. Amelia. The name hits him like a physical blow. Brooklyn. 17 years ago. A summer that felt like salvation. The woman whose laugh made him believe he could be something other than his father's weapon. The jazz club where she sang on weekends. The way she looked at him like he was a man with a future, not a past. Then one morning, she was gone. No note. No explanation. Just emptied drawers and the ghost of her perfume on his pillow. His phone buzzes. A reminder. Board meeting, 3 p.m., Crestwood expansion proposal. Jin stares at the screen, then at the stage where his son, stood moments ago. She was pregnant. She ran because she was pregnant. Amelia Anthony's kitchen table is covered in college brochures. MIT. Stanford. Columbia. All places her son could go. All places she can barely pronounce, let alone afford. Mom, you're doing the stress thing again. Elijah stands in the doorway, school uniform already on, yellow stuffed dog tucked under his arm. 15 years old and he still carries that thing everywhere. She smooths the wrinkles from the MIT pamphlet. Just looking at options, baby. We both know I'm going wherever gives the most aid. He pours himself cereal one-handed, dog secured in the crook of his elbow. You don't have to pretend it's a choice. The guilt is immediate and familiar. 17 years of working double shifts, of choosing between groceries and electricity, of saying yes to everything for him and nothing for herself. It's fine, Mom. Really. He sits across from her, and those eyes, those impossible golden eyes, meet hers with understanding too mature for his age. I'm grateful. I know how hard you've worked. He has your eyes, her mother said the day Elijah was born. That man's eyes, whoever he was. Not whoever. She knew exactly who. Can I ask you something? Elijah's voice is careful, testing boundaries they've drawn and redrawn for 15 years. Always. My dad. Does he know about me? Amelia's coffee goes cold in her hands. No, baby. He doesn't. But you know who he is. Yes. Is he dead? No. Then why? Because 17 years ago, I made a choice to protect you. Her voice is firmer than she feels. And I'd make it again. Elijah nods slowly, accepting what he's learned to accept. Some questions don't have answers that make sense. Some truths are too complicated for simple explanations. That night, her phone rings. Unknown number. Ms. Anthony? The voice is professional distant. This is Crestwood Academy. We'd like to inform you that your son has been selected for our expanded mentorship program. One of our benefactors has personally chosen Elijah for a one-on-one professional mentorship opportunity. Amelia feels something cold settle in her stomach. Who's the benefactor? The program operates on an anonymous basis, but I assure you. Who is the benefactor? A pause. I'm not at liberty to say, ma'am. But Mr. Jean comes highly recommended. He's expressed particular interest in students with Elijah's academic profile. Mr. Jean. The phone slips from Amelia's hand. Jean Taewon's penthouse office overlooks Manhattan like an emperor surveying conquered territory. 40 stories up, glass and steel, so far from the blood-soaked streets of Seoul that sometimes he can almost believe he's a different person. Almost. His assistant enters without knocking. One of exactly 3 people allowed that privilege. Sir, the Crestwood Academy files you requested. The folder lands on his desk with a soft thud. Inside, 15 years of a boy's life, reduced to documents and photographs. Kindergarten photo. Gap-toothed smile, yellow stuffed dog clutched tight. Those eyes already distinctive. 3rd grade, science fair winner. Project on renewable energy. Same dog, more worn. 8th grade, basketball team photo. Tall for his age, careful smile. Dog tucked in his backpack, just visible. Current year, honor roll. National Merit Scholar. MIT applicant. The dog's still there, a constant across every stage of childhood. Sir, his assistant hovers. The Crestwood board is asking about your increased involvement. They're curious about your sudden interest in the mentorship program expansion. Tell them it's about legacy. Jean doesn't look up from the photographs. About investing in the next generation. It's not entirely a lie. That night, he stands at his window, watching the city lights blur in the rain. His reflection stares back. Sharp suit, expensive watch, every visible inch of him screaming legitimate businessman. But he knows what's underneath. The tattoos he had removed left scars. The violence he learned never really leaves. His phone buzzes. Encrypted message from Crestwood's security contractor, someone he pays well to keep him informed. Subject: Amelia Anthony Research Activity Timeline. Past 48 hours search history. Jean Taewon, Korean businessman, Seoul organized crime history, reformed criminals, statute of limitations assault. She knows. Or suspects. And she's digging. Jin's hands curl into fists. 40 years old, and he still doesn't know how to do this. How to be a person instead of a weapon, a father instead of a ghost. His private line rings. Only 5 people have this number. Jean Taewon. His voice is measured. Careful. Stay away from my son. Amelia's voice cuts through 17 years like it's yesterday. I don't know what game you're playing, but we don't need your charity or your guilt or whatever this is. Amelia, you don't get to say my name. You don't get to show up after 17 years and pretend to be some benevolent benefactor. I know what you are. You knew what I was. I'm different. Reformed? Is that what you tell yourself? Her laugh is sharp, painful. I left because I was pregnant, Jean. Because I couldn't bring a baby into your world. And now you've found us and you're doing exactly what I was afraid of. You're inserting yourself into his life without asking, without permission, without. He deserves to know his father. He deserves a father who tells the truth. Are you going to tell him who you really are? What you've done. Why I ran. Silence stretches between them, loaded with everything they've never said. That's what I thought. Amelia's voice breaks. Stay away from us, Jean. Please. If you ever cared about me, if you care about him at all, just stay away. The line goes dead. Jean stands frozen, phone still pressed to his ear, while his carefully constructed world cracks down the middle. She was pregnant. She ran. She was protecting him. For me. Jean stands outside Crestwood Academy the next morning, watching students filter through the gates. He tells himself he's here for a board meeting. He tells himself he'll keep his distance. Then he sees him. Elijah, walking alone, yellow dog tucked under his arm, earbuds in, lost in his own world. 3 other students call out to him. Elijah waves, smiles, but doesn't stop. He's heading toward the library. Jean knows this because he's memorized the boy's schedule, his routines, his patterns. Surveillance disguised as care. That's not love. That would be surveillance, he can hear Amelia saying. Jean makes a decision. The wrong one or the right one, he won't know until it's too late. He intercepts Elijah at the library steps. Excuse me, Elijah Anthony? The boy turns, earbuds coming out, polite confusion on his face. Yeah. My name is Jean Taewon. I'm one of Crestwood's benefactors. I understand you've been selected for the mentorship program. Elijah's expression shifts, recognition without understanding. Yeah, wait. Have we met before? I don't believe so. Why do you ask? The teenager studies him, head tilted slightly. You look familiar. Like déjà vu or something. He shakes his head. Sorry, that's weird. Not weird at all. Jean extends his hand. I'd very much like to get to know you, Elijah. If you're interested in the mentorship program, I think we could learn a lot from each other. Elijah shakes his hand, and Jean feels the contact like electricity. This is his son. His son. This close, real solid. Yeah, okay. Elijah smiles. Uncertain but open. That sounds, yeah. Cool. Excellent. I'll have my assistant coordinate with your mother. Oh, about that. Elijah shifts uncomfortably. My mom's kind of protective. She might take some convincing. I understand. Mothers worry. Jean allows himself a small smile. It's their job. They exchange pleasantries. Make preliminary plans. Jean watches his son walk away. Yellow dog tucked secure, those golden eyes catching the morning light. What have I done? His phone buzzes. A text from Amelia. 3 words. I said no. Jean types back, he said yes. This is his choice. 3 dots appear, disappear, appear again. Finally. Then I'm telling him everything. This weekend. About you, about us, about why I left. He deserves the truth. Jean stares at the message. Then at the school where his son disappeared into a building built with his money, filled with opportunities he created, living a life he's only now discovering. The truth. He types, together. We tell him together. A long pause. Then, fine. Saturday, 2 p.m. Our apartment. Don't be late. And Jean? After this, after he knows everything, don't expect him to forgive either of us. Jean pockets his phone and looks up at Crestwood Academy, his monument to redemption, his attempt to build something good from ruins. 17 years ago, he was a weapon. Today, he's a benefactor, a philanthropist, a reformed man. This weekend, he'll be something else entirely. A father telling his son the truth about monsters and the men who used to be them. Hello, family. Where are you watching from? Kindly drop it in the comments so I can send special appreciation to you. And most importantly, hit the subscribe button to subscribe to this channel. Now, let's go deep into the story. Jean Taewon has perfected the art of invisibility. He stands at the back of Crestwood Academy's auditorium, tailored suit blending with the parent crowd, face angled just enough to avoid recognition. 15 years of funding this place, every scholarship, every renovation, every opportunity, and he's never once sat in the reserved donor section. That would require acknowledgement, gratitude, questions he's not prepared to answer. The principal drones on about excellence and achievement. Jin's eyes scan the rows of students, mentally cataloging which ones his money saved. The girl in the 3rd row who would have dropped out after her father's deportation. The boy with the robotics trophy who needed someone to believe engineering wasn't just for rich kids. Small interventions. Anonymous impact. This is how he atones, in increments, from a distance. Elijah Anthony, National Merit Scholar finalist. Jin's attention sharpens. A 15-year-old boy rises from the middle section. navy blazer crisp, movements careful and self-conscious. He carries something clutched to his chest, a yellow stuffed dog, worn soft with years. The other students don't mock it. There's something in the way he holds it, dignified somehow, that forestalls judgment. The boy crosses the stage, accepts his certificate, turns to face the audience. Jean stops breathing. The eyes, golden and luminous, catching the stage lights like molten amber. Not brown, not hazel. That specific genetic anomaly that appears once in 10,000 births, that marked Jin's grandfather, his father, himself. A signature written in DNA. His phone is in his hand before conscious thought, pulling up the database he's not supposed to access. His fingers move with muscle memory, born from decades of gathering intelligence, finding leverage, knowing things he shouldn't. Anthony, Elijah. Age, 15. Mother, Amelia Anthony, Brooklyn. Father, unknown. Scholarship recipient, 7th present. Amelia. The name detonates in his chest. Brooklyn. 17 years ago. The jazz club on Nostrand Avenue where she sang Fridays and Saturdays, voice like smoke and honey. 3 months of thinking maybe he could be someone different, someone clean. Then his father's call, the family business that was never really a business, and the plane back to Seoul he couldn't refuse. He'd searched for her. Hired investigators, called every Amelia in Brooklyn's database, haunted that jazz club for weeks before leaving. She'd vanished like she'd never existed. Because she was pregnant. Because she'd seen what he was and chosen to protect their child from it. Jean scrolls through Elijah's file with shaking hands. Kindergarten photo. Gap-toothed. Yellow dog clutched tight. 3rd grade. Science fair winner. Same dog visible in his backpack. 8th grade. Basketball team photo. Dog tucked under his arm. Every year, every milestone, that constant companion. 15 years of a life Jean never knew existed. On stage, Elijah says something to the principal that makes the older man laugh. The boy's smile is quick, genuine, then carefully neutral again, the practiced expression of someone used to not taking up too much space. Jean recognizes it. He wore that same smile for years, the mask of someone navigating worlds they weren't born into. The assembly ends. Students flood the aisles. Jean tracks Elijah through the crowd. The boy moves with his friends but slightly apart, listening more than talking, that yellow dog still clutched like a talisman against the chaos. Elijah laughs at something one of his friends says, head thrown back, completely unguarded. In that moment, he looks so young, so unburdened by the violence that shaped his father's life. Jean makes a decision that will change everything. He'll watch, learn, understand who this boy is before deciding whether to contaminate his world with truth. Maybe redemption isn't about what Jean wants. Maybe it's about what Elijah deserves, and whether that includes a father who trades blood money for scholarship funds, who mistakes surveillance for love. The boy disappears around a corner, friends trailing after him, yellow dog secure against his chest. Jean stands alone in the emptying auditorium, staring at the stage where his son stood moments ago, and wonders what kind of man watches his own child from the shadows and calls it protection. Jean submits the mentorship program proposal on a Tuesday. By Friday, the Crestwood board has approved it unanimously, not because it's particularly innovative, but because when your largest anonymous donor suggests an initiative, you don't ask questions. You say yes and send the press release. The program pairs 10 students with professionals in their fields of interest. Jean personally reviews every application, but he's already decided who he'll mentor. The rest is theater, the careful construction of coincidence. He attends Elijah's basketball game that Wednesday, sits 3 rows up, away from the parent section, watching his son play point guard with methodical precision. Elijah isn't the most talented player. His teammate with the ankle tattoos has better handles, the tall kid dominates rebounds, but Elijah sees the court differently. Anticipates. Positions himself where he needs to be before the play develops. Jean recognizes the intelligence in it. The way Elijah compensates for what he lacks with strategy, with reading the game 2 moves ahead. It's how Gene survived his father's world, not through strength, but through seeing patterns others missed. After the game, Gene approaches the coach, introduces himself as a potential sponsor for new equipment, mentions he's impressed by the team's point guard. That kind of spatial awareness and decision-making translates well to engineering. The coach agrees enthusiastically, calls Elijah over. Mr. Gene here was asking about you, Anthony. Says you've got good court vision. Elijah's yellow dog is tucked in his gym bag, just the ear visible. The boy extends his hand, polite and careful. Thank you, sir. You're interested in engineering? Gene asks, though he already knows. Has read every essay, every transcript, every teacher evaluation. Maybe. Or medicine. I haven't decided yet. Elijah shifts his bag, self-conscious. Both seem like ways to, fix things that are broken. Gene feels something crack in his chest. That's a good reason. The conversation lasts 3 minutes. Professional. Forgettable to anyone watching. But Gene catalogs everything. The way Elijah makes eye contact but glances away, the careful grammar that suggests code switching, the worn sneakers that cost less than Jin's watch. 2 weeks later, he sponsors the STEM fair. Walks past 20 projects before stopping at Elijah's robotics display, a prosthetic hand prototype built from salvaged parts and Arduino boards. The fingers move with surprising fluidity, controlled by sensor pads. Made it mostly from junkyard components, Elijah explains, demonstrating. Access to prosthetics is expensive. I wanted to see if you could make something functional for under $200. Why prosthetics? My friend's dad lost his hand in a construction accident. Insurance wouldn't cover a good one. Elijah's jaw tightens. Seems wrong that whether you can pick up your daughter depends on how much money you have. Gene studies the prototype, the elegant problem-solving in its design. You could patent this. Develop it further. Maybe. Elijah shrugs. I'd rather just make it work and open source the plans. Let people build their own. Of course he would. Amelia raised him to fix things, not profit from them. Career day comes next. Gene volunteers as a guest speaker. Vague title, legitimate business, carefully scrubbed biography that mentions soul but not what he did there. He talks about reinvention, second chances, using success to create opportunities for others. Elijah sits in the third row, yellow dog on his lap, taking notes in precise handwriting. After the presentation, Gene lingers while students ask questions about internships, college recommendations, the usual transactional concerns. Elijah waits until the room empties. Mr. Gene? I wanted to ask the mentorship program. I applied, but I'm not sure I'm the kind of candidate you're looking for. What kind is that? The impressive kind. I'm good at school, but I'm not exceptional. Not like some of the other kids here. Gene recognizes the fear underneath, that he's one mistake away from losing everything, that he doesn't belong in this world of privilege and easy futures. You built a prosthetic hand from junkyard scraps because you wanted to help someone. That's exactly the kind of person I'm looking for. Elijah's surprise is genuine. Really? Really? Gene extends his hand. If you're interested, I'd like to mentor you, Elijah. The handshake lasts 3 seconds. Gene memorizes the feel of it, his son's hand in his, this first point of real contact. Why me, though? Elijah asks. You could mentor anyone. Gene chooses his words with surgical precision. Because I see potential. And because I know what it's like to need someone to believe in you. It's not entirely a lie. Just not entirely the truth. They meet the following Tuesday at a coffee shop near campus. Gene asks about Elijah's goals, his fears, what keeps him up at night. The boy opens up slowly, talks about the pressure of being a scholarship kid, of his mother working double shifts, of wanting to be worth her sacrifice. She gave up everything for me, Elijah says, stirring coffee he's barely touched. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll let her down. That all her work will be for nothing. You won't. Gene speaks with certainty he doesn't feel. She's proud of you. How do you know? Because any parent would be. The conversation flows. Elijah asks about Jin's background, his path from Seoul to New York, what made him want to help students. Jin tells the sanitized version. Hardship, determination, wanting to give back. The story he's practiced until it sounds like truth. Then Elijah goes quiet, studying him with those golden eyes. Can I ask you something personal? Jin's pulse spikes. Of course. Did you know my dad? The world narrows to this moment. This lie that will define everything that follows. No. Why do you ask? Elijah shrugs, but there's something uncertain in his expression. I don't know. You remind me of what I imagine he might have been like. The way you talk about second chances and fixing broken things. He laughs, embarrassed. That's stupid. Sorry. It's not stupid. Jin's voice comes from somewhere far away. What do you imagine he was like? I used to think maybe he was a good person who made one big mistake. That he'd come back if he could, but something stopped him. Elijah fidgets with his coffee cup. But I'm 15 now. I know that's kid logic. He probably just didn't want to be a father. Jin sits across from his son, building a relationship on a foundation of lies, and wonders if there's any redemption deep enough to balance this particular sin. Maybe he wanted to be, Jin says quietly. Maybe he just didn't know how. The Brooklyn apartment building looks exactly like the kind of place Amelia would choose. Clean but worn, safe but not affluent. The sort of neighborhood where people work hard and mind their business. Jin climbs 3 flights of stairs, past cooking smells and muffled television voices, carrying expensive wine he already knows is a mistake. Elijah answers the door, still in his school uniform, yellow dog tucked under one arm. Hey, Mr. Jin. Come in. Mom's just finishing up dinner. The apartment is small, living room bleeding into kitchen, 2 bedrooms off a narrow hallway, furniture that's been carefully maintained for years past its intended lifespan. But it's clean, organized, filled with the specific warmth of a home built by someone who understands that love matters more than square footage. Elijah's science fair certificates cover one wall. Photos track his childhood. Gap-toothed in kindergarten, awkward in middle school, becoming himself by increments. In every single photo, the yellow dog appears. Mom, he's here. Amelia emerges from the kitchen, dish towel in hand, and Jin's carefully constructed world detonates. 17 years have changed her. Lines around her eyes that weren't there before, hair pulled back in a practical bun, hands that show the evidence of hard work. But she's still beautiful in the way that mattered to him then, the beauty that comes from strength and fierce intelligence and absolute certainty about who she is. Their eyes meet. He watches shock ripple across her face, then something harder, colder. Mr. Jin. Her voice is perfectly controlled. Elijah's told me about you. The mentorship. Ms. Anthony. He extends his hand, playing the part. Thank you for having me. She takes his hand for exactly 1 second. Her grip is a warning. Please sit. Dinner's almost ready. The meal is excruciating. Amelia serves chicken and rice with practiced efficiency, while Elijah fills the silence with nervous chatter about school, about his robotics project, about the upcoming MIT campus visit Jin arranged. Jin responds appropriately, aware of Amelia watching his every word, every gesture, cataloging evidence of threat. Mr. Jin was asking about meeting you, Elijah says between bites. I told him you work a lot. 2 jobs, Amelia confirms. Nurse at Brooklyn Methodist during the day. Weekend shifts at a clinic in Bed-Stuy. Someone has to pay for this young man's ambitions. The statement lands like an accusation. Jin hears what she's really saying. I did this alone. We don't need you. Your mother's sacrifice is admirable, Jin says carefully. You're lucky to have her. I know. Elijah looks at his mother with uncomplicated love. She's the best. Something crosses Amelia's face, pain and pride tangled together. She stands abruptly. Eli, honey, why don't you finish your calculus homework? I'll handle the dishes. But, now, baby. Please. Elijah recognizes the tone. He glances between them, sensing the undercurrent, then retreats to his room with his yellow dog and a backward look that says he knows something's wrong. The moment his door closes, Amelia turns on Jean with contained fury. "Get out." Her whisper is harsh, shaking. "Right now." "Amelia, don't." She moves between him and the hallway, as if her body alone could protect Elijah from contamination. "Don't you dare say my name like you have the right." "I didn't know." Jean keeps his voice low, steady. "About Elijah. About any of this. If you had, what? You would have left Seoul? Abandoned your father's business? Become a different person?" Her laugh is sharp and bitter. "You were who you were, Jean. I saw what you did. The violence, the cold calculation, the way you could hurt people and sleep fine afterward. I couldn't bring a baby into that world. I'm not that person anymore." "Really? So you didn't investigate my son without permission? Didn't insert yourself into his life using money and influence? Didn't manipulate a mentorship program to get close to him?" She steps closer, fury radiating from her like heat. "You're doing exactly what I was afraid of, controlling situations, gathering intelligence, operating in shadows. You've just found legal ways to do it." The accusation hits harder because it's true. He deserves to know his father. He deserves a father who tells the truth. Are you his mentor or his father, Jean? Because you can't be both. Not when one of those identities is built on lies. Then let me tell him. Let me explain. Explain what? That you collected debts with your fists? That you disappeared people for your father's organization? That I ran because I was terrified you'd turn our son into the same kind of weapon. Her voice breaks. He's good, Jean. Genuinely, beautifully good. He wants to help people. He builds prosthetics for construction workers and tutors kids in his old neighborhood and carries that stupid yellow dog everywhere because it was his first gift and he doesn't believe in throwing away things that matter. Jean feels something crack inside him. I know. I've watched him. I've seen. You've watched him? Like that's fatherhood? Like surveillance equals love. Amelia's eyes glisten with tears she won't let fall. You want to help him? Write another check and disappear. Fund his education, his future, whatever he needs. That's what you're good for, Jean. Money. Distance. Anonymous generosity that doesn't require actually showing up. I'm not leaving. The words come out harder than intended. He's my son. He's my son. I raised him. I sacrificed for him. I was there for every fever, every nightmare, every time he asked about a father who didn't exist. She's shaking now. You don't get to claim him because of biology. You don't get to walk in after 15 years and play father because you've developed a conscience. He has a right to know the truth. The truth will destroy him. He'll look at you differently. At himself differently. At me differently for keeping it from him. Amelia wraps her arms around herself. Is that what you want? To blow up his world because you need redemption. This isn't about redemption. Everything with you is about redemption. That's why you fund schools and mentor students and pretend you're some benevolent philanthropist. But you can't buy your way out of your past, Jean. And you can't use our son to feel better about the man you used to be. Down the hallway, a door opens. Elijah stands there, homework forgotten, yellow dog clutched to his chest. His golden eyes, Jin's eyes, move between them, reading the tension in their postures, the history in their silence. Is everything okay? His voice is young, uncertain. You guys seem, I don't know, tense. Amelia's mask slides back into place instantly. Everything's fine, baby. Mr. Jean was just leaving. Jean looks at his son, at Amelia, at the impossible situation he's created. He thinks about truth and lies, about what Elijah deserves versus what he can handle. Yes, he hears himself say, I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. He moves toward the door. Elijah follows, still clutching his dog, still sensing something unspoken. Mr. Jean? Did I do something wrong? Is the mentorship? You did nothing wrong. Jean forces warmth into his voice. I'll see you next week. We'll discuss your MIT application. Amelia stands frozen in the kitchen doorway, arms still wrapped around herself, watching him leave like she's witnessing a threat retreat. At the apartment door, Elijah touches Jin's arm. Hey, I don't know what that was about, but my mom's been through a lot. She can be protective. Don't take it personally. Jin looks at his son defending his mother. This good kid who builds prosthetics and carries childhood talismans and has no idea his world is about to shatter. I understand, Jin says. Your mother's remarkable. You're lucky to have her. I know. Elijah smiles, uncertain but trying. See you next week? Absolutely. Jin walks down 3 flights of stairs, past cooking smells and muffled television voices, into the Brooklyn night. His hands shake as he reaches his car. Not from fear or anger, but from the terrible knowledge that Amelia's right. He's doing exactly what he always did. Gathering intelligence, controlling situations, operating in shadows. He's just found legal ways to do it. And his son, his beautiful, good son, has no idea that his mentor is his father, that his father is a lie, and that the truth will change everything. The mentorship becomes a weekly ritual. Tuesday evenings at the coffee shop near Crestwood, where Jin watches his son wrestle with calculus and college essays while that yellow dog sits on the chair between them like a silent guardian. Elijah's applications are strong. Essays about his mother's sacrifice, his prosthetic project, the specific way poverty teaches you which problems matter. Jin makes calls, leverages connections he's spent years cultivating. MIT's admissions office suddenly becomes very interested in Elijah Anthony. Amelia watches everything. She's there when Jin picks Elijah up, standing in the apartment doorway with arms crossed, eyes tracking them like a predator assessing threat. She's there when they return, interrogating Elijah with casual questions that Jin recognizes as intelligence gathering. Where did you go? What did you talk about? Did he ask about me? Jin feels her presence in every interaction, the weight of her fury and fear pressing against the fragile structure he's built. But Elijah thrives. Jin takes him to a Korean restaurant in Midtown, teaches him to use chopsticks properly, explains the cultural significance of banchan and communal eating. Elijah absorbs it hungrily. This heritage he's been disconnected from, these pieces of himself he didn't know were missing. My mom never talked about this part, Elijah says, attempting to pronounce, with Jin's coaching. The Korean side. I always wondered but didn't want to push. Why not? She gets this look. Like it hurts to remember. Elijah tries the kimchi, winces at the spice, tries again. I figured maybe my dad was Korean. That talking about the culture meant talking about him. Jin's chopsticks freeze halfway to his mouth. That's perceptive. Yeah, well, 15 years of reading subtext. Elijah shrugs, but there's old pain underneath. You learn to notice what people don't say. They talk about philosophy, about Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics, about Korean concepts like Han and Jong that don't translate cleanly to English. Jin loans him books, some that shaped him before the violence, some that shaped him after. Elijah reads them all, comes back with questions that make Jin remember why he fell in love with ideas before he fell in love with power. Why don't you have kids of your own? Elijah asks one Tuesday, apropos of nothing, yellow dog tucked under his arm as they walk to Jin's car. The question lands like a blow. That's complicated. That's not an answer. Jin chooses his words carefully. I wasn't sure I'd be a good father. My own father was difficult. I didn't want to repeat his mistakes. But you'd be great. Elijah's certainty is painful. You're patient and you actually listen and you don't treat me like I'm stupid or fragile. That's like 90% of parenting, right? You have no idea, Jin thinks. I'm lying to you every single day. Another week, Elijah asks, did you ever love someone and leave them? Jin's hands tighten on the steering wheel. Yes. Why? Because I thought leaving would protect them from who I was. Did it? Jin looks at his son, the product of that leaving, that choice made 17 years ago. I don't know. Maybe you should ask them. The conversations become deeper, more dangerous. Elijah probes at the edges of Jin's past, sensing gaps in the narrative, inconsistencies in the timeline. "What's the worst thing you've ever done?" he asks one evening, and Jin realizes the boy isn't making small talk. He's investigating. "I've hurt people," Jin says slowly. "People who probably deserved it, but also people who were just in my way. I've made choices I can't undo. Do you regret them?" "Every day." That at least is true. But regret doesn't erase harm. It just teaches you to be different going forward. Elijah nods, processing. "Is that why you do this? The mentorship, the scholarships, all of it? Like redemption?" "Maybe." Gene meets his son's golden eyes. "Or maybe I'm just trying to prove I'm more than the worst thing I've ever done." "You are," Elijah says with absolute conviction. "Anyone can see that." Gene drives home that night thinking about the irony. He's living a double life again. Not as a criminal, but as a liar, and somehow this feels worse. At least before, he knew what he was. Now he's a fraud pretending to be a mentor, a benefactor pretending to be a father, a reformed man building relationships on foundations of deception. His phone rings at midnight. "Amelia." He almost doesn't answer. "We need to talk." Her voice is tired, not angry. "Not at my apartment. Meet me at Prospect Park tomorrow." "The boathouse." Noon. She's waiting on a bench when he arrives, feeding pigeons with old bread, looking smaller than he remembers. Not diminished, concentrated, like all her strength has compressed into something harder, denser. "He asked about you last night," she says without preamble. "Not you specifically. Korean men. Whether I dated any. Whether that's why I taught myself to make kimchi jjigae from YouTube videos." She throws more bread, watching the pigeons scramble. He's figuring it out, Gene. Maybe not consciously, but he's connecting dots. "Amelia, I see how he looks at you. How he talks about you. Mr. Gene thinks I should apply for this fellowship." Mr. Gene says engineering and medicine aren't that different. They're both about solving problems. Her voice cracks. "You're giving him something I couldn't. And I hate that I'm grateful for it." Gene sits beside her, careful to maintain distance. "You've given him everything that matters. But not this. Not a father figure. Not someone who sees potential instead of limitation." She finally looks at him. "The man you're being with him? That's who I thought you could become. Who I hoped you'd become before I realized hope was stupid. I'm trying. I know. That's the problem." Amelia wipes her eyes roughly. "If you were still that person, the one I ran from, this would be simple. I'd protect Eli and you'd be the villain. But you're not. You're genuinely helping him. Being present. Showing up. All the things I told myself you'd never do. Then why do you look like you're about to break?" "Because it's built on lies." Her voice rises, then drops. "Every conversation, every moment of connection, every time he trusts you, it's based on him not knowing who you really are. And when he finds out, and he will, it's going to destroy everything. The truth settles between them like a verdict." "Tell him the truth, or I will," Amelia says quietly. "He deserves to know. And if you really love him, you'll stop being a coward." Gene stares at the lake, at the pigeons, at anything except the woman who's offering him exactly what he wants and what terrifies him most. This weekend, he hears himself say, "We'll tell him together." Amelia nods, feeding the last of her bread to the birds. Saturday, 2 p.m. And Gene? After this, after he knows everything, don't expect him to forgive either of us. Saturday arrives with the weight of inevitability. Gene sits on Amelia's worn couch, hands clasped between his knees, while she paces near the kitchen. They've barely spoken since he arrived 20 minutes ago. There's nothing left to say except the truth, and that belongs to Elijah. The apartment door opens. Elijah enters with his basketball gear and that yellow dog, laughing at something on his phone. The laughter dies when he sees them both waiting. Sees his mother's red-rimmed eyes, sees Gene sitting in their living room on a Saturday like family. "What's going on?" His voice is careful, already bracing. "Mom." "Sit down, baby." Amelia's voice shakes. We need to talk to you about something important. Elijah sets his gym bag down slowly, clutches the yellow dog tighter. Is someone sick? Is it Grandma? No one's sick. Jean speaks for the first time. But your mother and I need to tell you something we should have told you from the beginning. The boy sits on the edge of the armchair, not settling, ready to flee. His eyes move between them, processing, calculating. Jean watches him put pieces together in real time, the tension at dinner weeks ago, his mother's questions about the mentorship, the way Jean knows things he shouldn't. 17 years ago, Amelia begins and her voice breaks. She tries again. 17 years ago, I met someone in Brooklyn, at a jazz club where I used to sing weekends. Elijah's knuckles whiten around the yellow dog. Jean takes over, keeping his voice steady. We were together for 3 months. I was different then, involved in things I'm not proud of, living a life I've spent years trying to atone for. Your mother saw who I really was, and when she discovered she was pregnant, she made a choice to protect you from that world. The silence stretches. Elijah stares at Jean like seeing him for the first time. She never told me, Jean continues. I went back to Seoul, back to my father's business. I didn't know you existed until 3 months ago, when I saw you at the scholarship assembly. The eyes, Elijah whispers. You saw my eyes. Yes. Jin's throat tightens. That genetic marker, it runs in my family. When I saw you, I knew immediately. Elijah turns to his mother. You knew. When he showed up for the mentorship. You knew who he was. Amelia nods, tears streaming. I was trying to figure out what to do, how to tell you. So you just, what? Let him pretend to be my mentor? Let me trust him, talk to him about my dad. Elijah's voice rises, then cuts off sharply. He goes very still, very cold. Jean recognizes the defense mechanism, the same one he learned at 15, the ability to lock down emotion when the world becomes too much. You lied to me, Elijah says quietly. Both of you. I was protecting you, Amelia starts. From what? From having a father. His voice is eerily calm. You decided I was better off not knowing. You decided I didn't deserve that choice. Eli, please. And you. Elijah turns those golden eyes on Jean, and they're hard now, distant. You found out you had a son and your first instinct was to spy on me. To manipulate your way into my life instead of just telling me the truth. I wanted to know who you were first, Jean says. I wanted to make sure my presence would help, not harm. You wanted to control the situation. Gather intelligence. Operate in shadows. Elijah stands abruptly. You wanted to know me without me knowing you. That's not love, Mr. Jean. That's surveillance. The words land like physical blows. Jean sees himself through his son's eyes, the man who claims to have changed, who speaks about redemption and second chances, still using the same tools, the same manipulations, just with legal paperwork. Your mother made the right choice 17 years ago, Jean says quietly. I wasn't safe to know. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Elijah. I just wanted you to know the truth. Now I know. Elijah's voice is flat. My father's a liar. My mother's a liar. The mentorship was fake. The conversations were fake. Everything was, his voice cracks. He pulls it back. I need you both to leave me alone. Eli, Amelia reaches for him. Don't. He steps back, yellow dog clutched against his chest like armor. I can't. I need to think. I need you both to go. Baby, this is our apartment. Then I'll go. Elijah grabs his gym bag, heads for the door. Wait. Jean stands, but Elijah's already in the hallway, door slamming behind him. The silence in the apartment is suffocating. Amelia collapses onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. Jean stands frozen, hands still reaching toward a door his son just fled through, understanding with perfect clarity that honesty doesn't guarantee healing. Sometimes truth just destroys first, and hope comes later. If it comes at all. 2 weeks later, Amelia texts Jean. He won't talk to me. Barely eating. Grades slipping. His teachers are worried. I don't know what to do. Gene sits in his penthouse office, 40 stories above a city that feels very far away, and reads the message 3 times. He thinks about reaching out, calling, showing up. But that's the pattern. Inserting himself, controlling situations, operating like connection can be manufactured through persistence. Another text. He took the yellow dog to school. He hasn't done that since 3rd grade. He's retreating, Gene. We broke something in him. Gene looks at the phone in his hands, the same hands that once dealt violence, that now sign checks and make calls and arrange opportunities. Hands that have held his sons exactly twice. Once in a handshake built on lies, once in a revelation that shattered everything. He doesn't text back. For the first time in 40 years, Gene Taewon has no plan, no strategy, no intelligence to gather. He's just a father who proved his son right, that surveillance and love are not the same thing, and some contaminations can't be cleansed with good intentions. In Brooklyn, Elijah Anthony lies in bed clutching a yellow stuffed dog, staring at the ceiling, trying to reconcile the mentor he trusted with the father he never knew, and finding that both men are strangers wearing familiar eyes. Jin's first letter takes 3 hours to write. He drafts it on his laptop, deletes everything, starts again by hand. The final version is 2 pages, front and back, his handwriting careful and deliberate, nothing like the rushed scrawl of his former life. He delivers it to Amelia on a Tuesday evening, envelope sealed, Elijah's name written across the front. You don't have to give it to him, Jean says at her doorstep. But if he wants to read it, I'd like him to have the choice. Amelia takes the envelope like it might detonate. What does it say? The truth. No justifications. Just things he deserves to know. She nods, doesn't invite him in. The door closes softly, not slammed. Jean counts that as progress. The letter sits on Amelia's kitchen counter for 3 days before Elijah picks it up. She watches him turn it over in his hands, studying his name in his father's handwriting, then carry it to his room. She doesn't know if he reads it. He doesn't mention it at dinner. Jin's second letter arrives the following Tuesday, then a third. He establishes a rhythm. Every week, a new envelope, a new piece of honesty. He doesn't ask Amelia if Elijah reads them. That's not the point. The point is showing up consistently, without demanding response, without using his presence as leverage. Letter 4. You asked me once if I ever loved someone and left them. I told you yes. I should have told you it was your mother. I should have told you that leaving her was the moment I realized I'd spent years becoming someone unrecognizable, and by the time I understood what I'd lost, it was too late to go back. I looked for her. Hired investigators, called every jazz club in Brooklyn, haunted Nostrand Avenue for weeks. But she'd disappeared completely, and eventually I had to accept that maybe some people leave because staying would destroy them. Letter 7. I've been thinking about the prosthetic hand you built. How you said access to healing shouldn't depend on money. You're right. I spent years accumulating wealth as if it could erase harm, as if enough zeros in the right accounts might balance the damage I caused. But you understand something I'm still learning, that fixing broken things isn't about resources. It's about presence, consistency, the unglamorous work of showing up, even when it's uncomfortable. Letter 10. Your mother told me you've been carrying the yellow dog to school again. I've seen it in every photo of you since kindergarten. I asked her about it once. She said it was the first gift she ever bought you. Cost more than she could afford back then, but you'd seen it in a store window and reached for it with such certainty that she knew it mattered. She said you've never been able to throw away things that matter. I wonder if that includes people. Some envelopes come back unopened. Gene doesn't change his pattern. He writes anyway. Amelia calls him 4 weeks after the revelation. Coffee. The place near Prospect Park. Tomorrow at 10. She's already there when he arrives, 2 cups on the table, steam rising between them like a barrier neither has figured out how to cross. He's reading them, she says without preamble. Not all of them, but some. I can tell because he leaves them on his desk instead of throwing them away. That's his filing system. Things that matter go on the desk. Gene wraps his hands around the coffee cup to stop them shaking. How is he? Angry. Confused. Sad. Amelia's voice is raw, but less broken. His grades are recovering. He's eating with friends again. He put the yellow dog back on his shelf instead of carrying it everywhere. That's good. Is it? She looks at him directly. Or is it just him learning to function around the damage we caused? They sit in silence, sipping coffee that's too hot, avoiding the real conversation. I've been thinking, Amelia finally says, about that summer. About the man you were before I saw what I saw. You used to quote Marcus Aurelius. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. You said it was about turning obstacles into opportunities. I remember. I thought it was beautiful. Aspirational. She traces the rim of her cup. I didn't realize you were using philosophy to rationalize violence. That you'd turned obstacles into people who needed to be removed. Jean flinches. I was very good at rationalization. And now, are the letters rationalization too? A new strategy for the same goal. Getting what you want. I don't know. The honesty surprises him. I hope not. I'm trying to give him space to decide for himself. To not manipulate or control or... He stops. But I can't know my own motives completely. Maybe I'm still that person, just with better disguises. Amelia studies him for a long moment. The man I loved 17 years ago would have said he knew exactly why he did everything. Would have had perfect clarity, perfect certainty. You're different. More uncertain. More honest about your own bullshit. Is that progress? I think so. Maybe. She stands, gathering her purse. Keep writing the letters, Jean. Don't stop, even if he never responds. That's what he needs to see. That you'll show up consistently without demanding anything back. Amelia. And keep meeting me here. Once a week. We need to figure out how to be co-parents, whether he ever forgives us or not. She leaves before he can respond. Jean sits alone with 2 empty coffee cups, watching the park through the window, thinking about patience and persistence and the specific kind of courage required to keep showing up when you're not wanted. His phone buzzes that evening. Amelia, he asked about you today. Asked if you were still writing letters. I said yes. He nodded and went to his room. It's not much, but it's something. Jean reads the message 3 times, then opens his notebook to start letter 11. His hand hovers over the page, and he thinks about his son's desk, about the yellow dog back on its shelf, about the slow work of earning trust that was never freely given. He writes, Elijah, I don't know if you're reading these, but I'm going to keep writing them anyway, because showing up consistently is the only promise I know how to keep now. The text arrives on a Wednesday evening, 3 months after the revelation, after 13 letters delivered and no responses received. Jean is in his office reviewing contracts when his phone lights up with an unknown number. This is Elijah. Can we meet? Just us. Tomorrow after school. There's a diner on Flatbush near my apartment. 4 p.m.? Jean reads it 4 times before his hands stop shaking enough to respond. I'll be there. He arrives 15 minutes early, takes a booth by the window where he can see the door. Orders coffee he doesn't drink. Watches the clock, 3:58, 3:59, 4 o'clock. At 4:03, Elijah walks in. No yellow dog. Just his backpack and a careful, guarded expression that makes him look older than 15. Jean stands. Sits. Stands again. Thank you for coming. Yeah. Elijah slides into the opposite seat. Doesn't make eye contact. So. The waitress saves them. Takes their order with practiced indifference. Elijah asks for a burger and fries. Jean orders the same, though he knows he won't be able to eat. Silence stretches between them like a chasm neither knows how to cross. I read your letters, Elijah finally says, still looking at the table. Not all of them at first. But eventually I went back and read them all. In order. Jin's chest tightens. I wasn't sure if you were. I know. You kept writing anyway. Elijah traces a pattern on the table with his finger. I don't know. It meant something. I didn't write them to manipulate you into meeting me. I know. Elijah looks up, and those golden eyes are still guarded but searching. That's why I'm here. Because you didn't push. Didn't show up at school or try to buy your way back in, or you just wrote letters and left me alone. The food arrives. Neither of them touches it. Why didn't you look harder for Mom? Elijah asks abruptly. In the letters, you said you searched for weeks. But weeks isn't that long. If you really loved her. I did look. Hired investigators called every jazz club, every Amelia in Brooklyn's database. Jin's voice is steady. But your mother is very good at disappearing when she needs to. And eventually my father called me back to Seoul for what he called family business. I had a choice. Keep looking for a woman who'd made it clear she didn't want to be found, or go back and face consequences that wouldn't just affect me. So you chose yourself. Yes. The admission costs him. I chose wrong. I told myself I'd come back, that I'd find her once things settled. But they never settled, and eventually I convinced myself she was better off without me. That was cowardice dressed up as nobility. Elijah nods slowly, processing. What if you'd found us when I was little? Like 5 or 6. Honestly, I probably would have tried to do what I did 3 months ago. Insert myself carefully, control the situation, gather information before revealing who I was. Jean meets his son's eyes. I would have told myself it was to protect you, but really it would have been to protect myself. From rejection. From having to face what I'd done. Do you regret your past or just regret getting caught? The question is sharp, intelligent, designed to cut through bullshit. Jean recognizes where it comes from. This is a kid who's learned not to trust easy answers. Both maybe. At first, Jean chooses words carefully. I regret who I was. I regret that I didn't become this person sooner, that I needed to hit bottom before I understood the harm I'd caused. But I also regret specific things. Specific people I hurt, specific choices I can't undo. It's not abstract. I carry names with me. Mom says you're different. That the man she knew is gone. Do you believe her? Elijah's expression shifts, something vulnerable breaking through. I don't know what I believe. The mentor who helped me, who taught me about philosophy and listened to my problems, that person felt real. But he was also lying about the most important thing. So was any of it real? Or was it all just strategy? It was real, Jean says quietly. Everything I told you about seeing your potential, about believing in you, that was true. The lie was the context. Who I was to you. But my respect for you, my pride in watching you work, my hope for your future, none of that was strategy. How do I know the difference? You don't. Not for certain. Jin's hands curl around his coffee cup. That's the consequence of lying. It contaminates everything, even the truth. All I can do is keep showing up honestly and let you decide what you believe. Elijah picks at his fries, not eating, just moving them around. I was so angry. I'm still angry. But also, he stops, starts again. I've always wondered about my father. Made up stories about who he might be, why he left. And the real story is messier and sadder and more complicated than any version I imagined. I'm sorry I'm not the father you deserved. Yeah, well, I'm not sure anyone gets the parents they deserve. Elijah almost smiles. We just get the ones we get. They sit with that truth between them. Not reconciliation, but not rejection either. Something more fragile, more honest. Can we do this again? Elijah asks as they gather their things. Meet, I mean. Talk. No promises about forgiving you or anything. Just see what happens. Whenever you want. Jin's voice catches. You set the pace. You decide when and where and how often. I'll show up. They walk outside together, into the late afternoon light. Elijah adjusts his backpack, looks at Jean with something less guarded than before. Can you teach me some Korean? I don't know anything about that part of me. My heritage, I mean. Jin's eyes well up before he can stop them. I'd be honored. Cool. Next week? Same time. I'll be here. Elijah nods, turns to leave, then turns back. Hey, the letters. Keep writing them. Even if we're meeting. I like having them. Something I can go back to when I'm trying to figure all this out. He walks away before Jean can respond, disappearing into the Brooklyn afternoon. Jean stands outside the diner, watching his son leave, understanding that this is what hope looks like. Not fireworks or dramatic declarations, just a teenage boy agreeing to meet again, asking to learn Korean, requesting that the letters continue. Small steps. Fragile bridges. The slow, unglamorous work of building trust from rubble. Jean pulls out his phone and texts Amelia. We met. He wants to try. I'll tell you everything. Coffee tomorrow? Her response is immediate. Tomorrow. And Jean? Don't screw this up. He won't. Or he'll try not to. Which is all anyone can promise when they're learning how to be a father 15 years too late. The text arrives on a Wednesday evening, 3 months after the revelation, after 13 letters delivered and no responses received. Jean is in his office reviewing contracts when his phone lights up with an unknown number. This is Elijah. Can we meet? Just us. Tomorrow after school. There's a diner on Flatbush near my apartment. 4 p.m.? Jean reads it 4 times before his hands stop shaking enough to respond. I'll be there. He arrives 15 minutes early, takes a booth by the window where he can see the door, orders coffee he doesn't drink, watches the clock, 3:58, 3:59, 4 o'clock. At 4:03, Elijah walks in. No yellow dog, just his backpack and a careful, guarded expression that makes him look older than 15. Jean stands. Sits. Stands again. Thank you for coming. Yeah. Elijah slides into the opposite seat. Doesn't make eye contact. So. The waitress saves them. Takes their order with practiced indifference. Elijah asks for a burger and fries. Jean orders the same, though he knows he won't be able to eat. Silence stretches between them like a chasm neither knows how to cross. I read your letters, Elijah finally says, still looking at the table. Not all of them at first. But eventually I went back and read them all. In order. Jin's chest tightens. I wasn't sure if you were. I know. You kept writing anyway. Elijah traces a pattern on the table with his finger. I don't know. It meant something. I didn't write them to manipulate you into meeting me. I know. Elijah looks up, and those golden eyes are still guarded but searching. That's why I'm here. Because you didn't push. Didn't show up at school or try to buy your way back in, or you just wrote letters and left me alone. The food arrives. Neither of them touches it. Why didn't you look harder for Mom? Elijah asks abruptly. In the letters, you said you searched for weeks. But weeks isn't that long. If you really loved her. I did look. Hired investigators called every jazz club, every Amelia in Brooklyn's database. Jin's voice is steady. But your mother is very good at disappearing when she needs to. And eventually my father called me back to Seoul for what he called family business. I had a choice. Keep looking for a woman who'd made it clear she didn't want to be found, or go back and face consequences that wouldn't just affect me. So you chose yourself. Yes. The admission costs him. I chose wrong. I told myself I'd come back, that I'd find her once things settled. But they never settled. And eventually I convinced myself she was better off without me. That was cowardice dressed up as nobility. Elijah nods slowly, processing. What if you'd found us when I was little? Like 5 or 6. Honestly, I probably would have tried to do what I did 3 months ago. Insert myself carefully, control the situation, gather information before revealing who I was. Jean meets his son's eyes. I would have told myself it was to protect you. But really it would have been to protect myself. From rejection. From having to face what I'd done. Do you regret your past or just regret getting caught? The question is sharp, intelligent, designed to cut through bullshit. Jean recognizes where it comes from. This is a kid who's learned not to trust easy answers. Both maybe. At first. Jean chooses words carefully. I regret who I was. I regret that I didn't become this person sooner. that I needed to hit bottom before I understood the harm I'd caused. But I also regret specific things. Specific people I hurt, specific choices I can't undo. It's not abstract. I carry names with me. Mom says you're different. That the man she knew is gone. Do you believe her? Elijah's expression shifts, something vulnerable breaking through. I don't know what I believe. The mentor who helped me, who taught me about philosophy and listened to my problems, that person felt real. But he was also lying about the most important thing. So was any of it real? Or was it all just strategy? It was real, Jean says quietly. Everything I told you about seeing your potential, about believing in you, that was true. The lie was the context, who I was to you. But my respect for you, my pride in watching you work, my hope for your future, none of that was strategy. How do I know the difference? You don't. Not for certain. Jin's hands curl around his coffee cup. That's the consequence of lying. It contaminates everything, even the truth. All I can do is keep showing up honestly and let you decide what you believe. Elijah picks at his fries, not eating, just moving them around. I was so angry. I'm still angry. But also, he stops, starts again. I've always wondered about my father. Made up stories about who he might be, why he left. And the real story is messier and sadder and more complicated than any version I imagined. I'm sorry I'm not the father you deserved. Yeah, well, I'm not sure anyone gets the parents they deserve. Elijah almost smiles. We just get the ones we get. They sit with that truth between them. Not reconciliation, but not rejection either. Something more fragile, more honest. Can we do this again? Elijah asks as they gather their things. Meet, I mean. Talk. No promises about forgiving you or anything. Just see what happens. Whenever you want. Jin's voice catches. You set the pace. You decide when and where and how often. I'll show up. They walk outside together, into the late afternoon light. Elijah adjusts his backpack, looks at Jean with something less guarded than before. Can you teach me some Korean? I don't know anything about that part of me. My heritage, I mean. Jin's eyes well up before he can stop them. I'd be honored. Cool. Next week? Same time. I'll be here. Elijah nods, turns to leave, then turns back. Hey, the letters. Keep writing them. Even if we're meeting. I like having them. Something I can go back to when I'm trying to figure all this out. He walks away before Jean can respond, disappearing into the Brooklyn afternoon. Jean stands outside the diner, watching his son leave, understanding that this is what hope looks like. Not fireworks or dramatic declarations, just a teenage boy agreeing to meet again, asking to learn Korean, requesting that the letters continue. Small steps. Fragile bridges. The slow, unglamorous work of building trust from rubble. Jean pulls out his phone and texts Amelia. We met. He wants to try. I'll tell you everything. Coffee tomorrow? Her response is immediate. Tomorrow. And Jean? Don't screw this up. He won't. Or he'll try not to. Which is all anyone can promise when they're learning how to be a father 15 years too late. A year later, Elijah's bedroom looks like a hurricane hit a college bookstore. MIT sweatshirts spill from half-packed boxes, textbooks stack precariously on his desk, and somewhere under the chaos is a checklist Amelia made that he's systematically ignoring. Jean arrives at noon with packing supplies and lunch from the Korean place Elijah's come to love. He finds his son sitting in the middle of the floor, surrounded by belongings, looking overwhelmed. I don't know how I accumulated this much stuff, Elijah says by way of greeting. Like, did I really need 3 different graphing calculators? Engineering student logic. Jean sets down the food and surveys the disaster. Okay. Categories. Keep, donate, store. Let's build a system. They work side by side for 2 hours, developing the rhythm they've built over 12 months of Korean lessons and weekend dinners and careful conversations that slowly became easier. It's not the effortless bond of a father who is always there. There are still moments of awkwardness, topics they navigate carefully, history that leaves gaps. But it's real. Hard one. Chosen. Amelia comes home from her shift at the hospital, takes one look at the organized chaos, and shakes her head. Y'all are doing it wrong. You pack clothes first, then, you know what, never mind. I'm making dinner. She cooks in the tiny kitchen. Her grandmother's mac and cheese alongside Jin's bulgogi, Southern comfort meeting Korean tradition on mismatched plates. They eat together at the cramped table, laughing when Elijah admits he's never actually done his own laundry, arguing about whether Boston winters are worse than New York ones, sharing hopes and fears about the future in the shorthand of people who've learned to be family. I found something today, Elijah says later, pulling out his laptop. MIT sent a dorm checklist. Look at number 17. Jean and Amelia lean in. Photo frame for personal pictures. I was thinking, Elijah continues, not quite meeting their eyes. Maybe we could take one? The three of us? If that's okay. Amelia's hand goes to her mouth. Baby, that's more than okay. They take the photo on Amelia's phone, awkward and unpracticed. Elijah in the middle, his mother's arm around his shoulders, Jin's hand on his back. They're not quite touching Jean and Amelia, but they're close. A family built from fractured pieces, still learning the shape of themselves. Jean excuses himself to the hallway, returns with a small velvet box. I have something for you. For MIT. Elijah opens it carefully. Inside is a jade pendant on a silver chain, the stone deep green and perfectly smooth, clearly old, clearly precious. It belonged to my grandmother, Jean explains. The only person in my family who saw me as more than a weapon or a disappointment. She gave it to me when I was 16, told me it was for wisdom and protection. I want you to have it. Elijah lifts the pendant, watches it catch the light. Jean, this is? I can't take something this important. You already are important. This is just a stone. Jin's voice roughens. You don't need the protection anymore. You have your mother for that. But wisdom, that's a lifelong journey. And I want you to carry something that connects you to the parts of your heritage that aren't just violence and regret. Elijah puts the necklace on, fingers the jade carefully. Then he stands and hugs Jean, not the careful formal embraces of their early meetings, but tight and genuine, like he means it. Thank you, Abog. The word father still catches Jean off guard every time. He doesn't know if he deserves it. But he's learning that deserving isn't the point. Showing up is. Being present is. Choosing, every day, to be worthy of the title, even when it feels impossible. You're welcome, son. The next morning, they drive to JFK in Jin's car, Amelia in the passenger seat, Elijah in back with his carry-on and nervous energy. They're early. Too early. But none of them wanted to risk being late, wanted to cut short these last hours. At the terminal, reality settles in. This is happening. This boy they've raised together and separately, who carries both their stubbornness and both their hope, is leaving. Amelia cries first, pulling Elijah into a fierce hug that makes him 15 again, small and needing her. I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud. You call me when you land, you hear? And every Sunday. And whenever you need anything. I will, Mom. I promise. Elijah's voice breaks. Thank you for everything. For every sacrifice, every double shift, every time you chose me over yourself. I see it now. I see all of it. She kisses his forehead, smooths his hair one more time, then steps back to give him space. Elijah turns to Jean. Their relationship is newer, more fragile, but no less real for its recent construction. I'm glad you found us, Elijah says quietly. I'm glad you stayed. I'll always stay now. Jean grips his son's shoulder. You text me when you land. And when you need help with anything. And when you don't need help but want to talk anyway. I will, Abog. They embrace, quick and tight, saying in gesture what they're still learning to say in words. Elijah picks up his bags, adjusts his backpack. Jean notices something missing. You forgot the yellow dog. Elijah smiles, a real one, unguarded. No, I didn't forget. I'm ready to leave him behind. I don't need him anymore. He walks towards security, turns back once to wave, then disappears into the crowd of travelers and futures and beginnings. Jean and Amelia stand together at the barrier, watching until he's completely gone. We did okay, Amelia says quietly, wiping her eyes. Somehow, despite everything, we did okay. You did okay. You raised an extraordinary person. Jin's voice is rough. I'm still learning how to be his father. We all are. She looks at him, really looks at him, and something softens. You showed up, Jean. That's what mattered. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but consistently. You kept showing up. They walk back to the parking garage side by side. Not lovers, not strangers, something better. Co-parents, friends, two people who survived their mistakes and built something good from the wreckage. The elevator is broken, so they take the stairs, and somewhere between floors 3 and 4, Amelia laughs. What? Jean asks. I was just thinking. 17 years ago, if someone told me we'd be here, watching our son go to MIT, actually functioning as adults, not hating each other, I would have thought they were insane. 17 years ago, I would have thought redemption was impossible. Is that what this is? Redemption. Jean considers. I don't know. Maybe it's just being present. Doing the work. Choosing differently every day until the choosing becomes who you are. They reach the car. Jean unlocks it, but neither of them gets in immediately. They stand in the concrete stillness of the parking garage, two people who broke each other and their son, and somehow found a way to build something new from the pieces. He's going to be okay, Amelia says. Better than okay. Yeah, he is. Jean drives her back to Brooklyn, and they don't talk much, but the silence is comfortable. When he drops her off, she touches his arm briefly. Gratitude, acknowledgement, something like forgiveness. Same time next week? Coffee at the park. I'll be there. He watches her walk into her building, then drives back to Manhattan thinking about eyes and inheritance and the specific way love can look like patience. They say eyes are windows to the soul. When Jean looks into his son's eyes now, he doesn't see his guilt or Elijah's anger. He sees his son's future, bright, unburdened, free. And he sees his own present, a man who finally learned that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about being brave enough to face it, honest enough to own it, and patient enough to earn what you can never demand. Jean is Elijah's father. Not because he deserves to be, but because he chose to show up. And he'll keep choosing it every day, for the rest of his life. Not perfectly, not without stumbling, but consistently, honestly, with the kind of love that understands showing up is the practice, and the practice never ends. He drives through the city lights, heading home, carrying the weight of his past and the gift of his present, understanding finally that some transformations take a lifetime, and that's okay. That's exactly as it should be. Let us know in the comments what you'll do. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this story moved you. Your engagement helps us share more stories that matter. At Melisa Loves Stories, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Melisa voice.